For more on this, Sanjay Bhandari, the chair of anti-racism charity Kick It Out, joins us now. Sanjay, thank you so much for your time. I think the word that will stand out from your organization's statement is gaslighting, a very loaded term. Is that what you see this as, gaslighting?
Good afternoon. Thanks for inviting me on. Well, yeah, we said gaslighting because we meant gaslighting. That's the reaction. The comments afterwards were, that adds insult to injury when someone's the victim of racist abuse, to then be told, well, as a club, we can't be racist, and no one who works for us can be racist because we had a really famous black player who's one of our club legends. It's a bit like saying some of my best friends are black. I mean, it's like the oldest sort of trick in the book. It's a complete nonsense, and actually the suggestion that somehow Vinicius Jr brought this on himself by some form of disrespectful celebration, that's a shameful comment from Jose Mourinho. It's utterly shameful. It is gaslighting, and it's worse than gaslighting. It's hypocritical, and it is double standards from Jose Mourinho. I mean, who is he to cast judgments on other people behaving in an inappropriate manner and with a form of decorum and not being provocative? Because in effect, what he's saying is that the player has a duty not to be provocative. This is Jose Mourinho we're talking about. We're not talking about Mother Teresa here. This is the guy who, what about his knee slide at Old Trafford? Vinicius Jr just celebrated a goal. How different is that to Mourinho's knee slide when he was with Porto at Old Trafford? This is also the guy who, when he was at Real Madrid, kept referring to the late Tito Villanova, the manager of Barcelona, as Pito, which is a derogatory Spanish slang term, and then poked Villanova in the eye during an El Clasico. But he expects the players, he expects Vinicius Jr to behave to a higher standard than he's prepared to behave himself. That, of course, adds insult to injury, and of course it's gaslighting.
Would you also term this as victim blaming? And just how upsetting has it been? I mean, you've kind of set it out for us there, but how upsetting has it been to see someone like Jose Mourinho and other figures suggest that it is Vinicius's fault?
It's massively, deeply disappointing to see people hint at and suggest that this is the victim's fault. It is depressing to see.
Kick It Out statements goes on to urge leaders in football to set standards. Is that aimed at UEFA? Is it aimed at Mourinho?
Well, it's all leaders. It's saying all leaders have a responsibility. We all have a responsibility in sports, given our positions of power and our relative positions of power and influence, to behave professionally and responsibly, because people follow your lead. And if I look at UEFA, what have they done? They've abided by the three-step protocol. They have created this investigation. They're doing the right things. If I look at Mourinho, I've just explained how I think what he has said has been unprofessional and he's not demonstrating the leadership that we would expect. And if you look at Benfica, look, I can understand when a club wants to protect its player and wants to stand behind its player. But in an incident like this, where they can't possibly know what was said either, to just blindly stand behind your player and say, yes, we 100% believe him, rather than saying, look, we don't know what happened, but we will cooperate with a regulatory process and we'll abide by the outcome. That's the response I expect from a professional outfit, not trying to put pressure on the process by saying, we're sure that our person is right. They can't possibly know that.
Yeah, as you mentioned there, they've doubled down in their defence of the player. What would you like to see a leading club do in this situation? Do you think they should have just kept quiet?
I think they should have said that they're going to cooperate with the process. Of course, we expect them to support their player. I would want them to send their wishes to the other player who has made the complaint, and that they would then abide by the outcome. That's, I think, the professional response. It is not to jump in behind your player, automatically assume that they're right, and go in punching. I don't think that's appropriate in this kind of situation.
And then and we should stress that Prestianni denies the claims, if he's found to be guilty, what do you think is the appropriate punishment?
I believe that they now have a minimum 10-game ban. So I think it has to be the minimum, doesn't it? And then there aren't many cases in of this kind, and so there are not many precedents where you can say, well, this is more serious or less serious than that other particular previous case. It also depends on what the evidence is, what was said, what was alleged to have been said, and by the way, this is not purely one person's word against the other. You know, these kinds of cases do happen. When we see these kinds of cases here in the UK, I'm not sure exactly how it will go in Europe, but when we see these cases here in the UK, they will take evidence of what each person says that they either said or thought they heard, and of course there has to be a sort of match between that, because how were the words that were said, could they possibly have been misheard in the way in which they were misheard? And also looking at the other behaviour, like, well, if you really did say that, why were you covering your mouth? Why were you putting your mouth under your shirt? That's also relevant evidence as to which person is to be believed, which version of events is to be believed, and these kinds of things are proved on the balance of probabilities. It's not a court of law. It's not a criminal court. It doesn't have to be proved beyond all reasonable doubt. It's which witness is going to be the most credible witness.
And how important do you think it is that players like Kylian Mbappe and Trent Alexander-Arnold have spoken up and have kind of backed Vinicius Jr. immediately after he made those claims?
You know, whenever there's one of these events and one of these incidents, it's always depressing in some way. But the hope that you see is when teammates stick up for their teammates and help and support them. I'm glad that he has got the support of Kylian Mbappe and Trent Alexander-Arnold and the rest of his Real Madrid teammates.
There's now the issue of the return leg in Madrid, and we just heard Carve saying that Prestianni will be able to feature in that because the investigation is going to take some time. What are your thoughts on that?
I think he's sadly probably right. I mean, it's important that when there is a process that it's done fully and professionally and take the appropriate evidence. And I think sadly that probably does mean that it is unlikely to be resolved before the return leg.
And then do you think from Jose Mourinho there should be, I know you've said, you know, what the club should have done and the way that they should have reacted. Do you think there might be some follow-up from Jose Mourinho? Are you expecting that? Would you like to see that?
I like Jose Mourinho as a coach, and I like his personality, that he's edgy and that he is a competitor. But I hope he would reflect on what he said, and I feel he got it wrong, and I hope he would acknowledge that he got it wrong. I think he's a big enough person to admit when he got it wrong, but I think he got it wrong.
And just finally, one more question for you, Sanjay. Just, you know, we had a Portuguese journalist on here a little while ago talking about, you know, pretty disgusted at the incidents and talking about the impact on Portuguese football. Do you think this says anything about the state of football in general when it comes to the way in which we handle racism and the way in which it's treated?
It's always difficult to make generalisations based on one case. I think I will leave to other people who know more about Portuguese football to say whether or not this says anything more about them. Does it say anything about the way we deal with these issues generally in football? To some degree, I think you're seeing the best and worst of it, really, aren't you? You're seeing some of the best of it in the way in which Trent Alexander-Arnold and Kylian Mbappe react and support their teammates, and you're seeing some of the worst of it in the way that, you know, to a degree, Benfica and Mourinho reacted to it.
Now, Sanjay, we've just seen a statement from FIFA President Gianni Infantino. I'm going to read the statement out loud, and then I'd like to get your immediate reaction to it, please. So the statement says, "I was shocked and saddened to see the incidents of alleged racism towards Vinicius Jr. There's absolutely no room for racism in our sport and in society. We need all the relevant stakeholders to take action and hold those responsible to account. FIFA are committed to ensuring that players, officials and fans fans are respected and protected, and the appropriate action is taken when incidents occur. I commend the referee for activating the anti-racism protocol. FIFA and football shows full solidarity to victims of racism and any form of discrimination. I always continue to reiterate no to racism, no to discrimination. Pretty strongly worded there, Sanjay. Do you have an immediate reaction for us and, on behalf of Kick It Out?
Well, I'm grateful to him for focusing where we started our statement, which is listen to the victim, believe the victim, and importantly, have the victim feel listened to and heard, and their interests are almost really paramount when we've got an incident like this. So yeah, I'm grateful for resetting from a leadership perspective where the focus should be, which is on supporting the victims of discrimination and ensuring that there's a fair and appropriate process to investigate this complaint.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and for your time this afternoon.
Thank you.